Shalom, everybody. This is Tim. This week's Torah portion is Vayeshev. Jacob has returned home from his exile, and he's already met his brother again, his brother that wanted to kill him, Esav, and now he's back in the land with his children. And it seems like for Jacob, this is going to be a pretty nice, quiet life now, but no, it would not work out that way. As a matter of fact, his next to youngest son, Joseph, was a brat, and his brothers just couldn't very well put up with him being a brat. And we're at the point in the Torah where Jacob said, "Son, go and see what your brothers are doing." Basically, he kind of sent him out as being a spy. And so he went, and they saw him coming. Now, Joseph had already been telling about his dreams. "Well, let me tell you all about my dream. We were gathering wheat, and your stalks bowed down to my stalk. Oh, let me tell you about another dream. There were all these stars, and y'all were stars, and Mama and Daddy were stars, and they bowed down to me. Oh, how wonderful, how marvelous." You can see that the brothers would really like to throat punch him, and it would not be difficult to understand why. So there the brothers were. They had taken the father's sheep out, and they were out with them for quite some time. Jacob sent Joseph, "Go find out what's going on, come back and give me word." Well, they saw him coming from a distance, and they said, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's get rid of him." Because they just didn't want to put up with him anymore. Now, we all know the story about how they threw him into a pit. But how much do we really know about the story? Because everybody says, well, his brothers sold him into Egypt. There's a commentator by the name of Rashbam. Now, Rashbam is the grandson of Rashi, who is the go-to man on understanding the Torah in its basic sense. And Rashbam has a brilliant commentary on it. I'm going to read some of it here to you. He says, "While the brothers had been sitting down to consume their meal, having distanced themselves somewhat from the pit into which they had thrown Joseph, in order not to be guilty of eating while spilling blood, they were waiting for the Ishmaelites whom they had seen in the distance to arrive." Now, I can tell you, I find it very easy to believe that the brothers would have thrown him in the pit. He would have been hollering, would have been begging, "Please let me out." They would have wanted to get up and get away from the sound. To continue, during this period, the Midianites, coming from a different direction, had passed there, saw Joseph in the pit, pulled him up, and proceeded to sell him to the Ishmaelites. One may assume that the brothers had no knowledge of this. And really, he makes a very good point, because if you go and look at it, they threw him in the pit, the brothers sat down to eat, and then Reuben, who wanted to save him, and said he returned to the pit. Well, where had Reuben been? He had been with his brothers. And I think Rashbam hit it right on the head. I'm certainly going to agree with him that the brothers would not want to sit there listening to him hollering and crying, "Brothers, brothers, please help me," because their consciences would have really bothered them. So they knew that the Ishmaelites were coming, but it seems like the Amalekites had gotten to him first, because it was they who sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites who then sold Joseph to the Egyptians. Now, but what about where in Genesis 45, 4 through 5, it says this, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'Please come near me.'" This is where he reveals himself to his brothers. So they came near. "I'm Joseph, your brother, the one you sold to Egypt," he said. Aha! Well, doesn't that mean that Rashbam has to be wrong? Actually, if you're looking at it from Joseph's perspective, he didn't know any different. As a matter of fact, let's look at what Joseph said just a little bit later. This is after Jacob died, and the brothers are really worried now that Joseph was the number 2 man in the land of Egypt. And they said, "We're really sorry, and Father really wants you to be very nice to us." And this is what it says. Chapter 50, verses 17 through 21. "Then Joseph wept when they spoke to him. And his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, 'Behold, we are your slaves.' But Joseph said to them, 'Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Yes, you yourselves planned evil against me. God planned it for good, in order to bring about what it is this day, to preserve the lives of many people. So now don't be afraid. I myself will provide food for you and your little ones. So he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. Okay. The second time he talks about it, and after he has had time with his brothers, this time he only says, you planned evil against me. He doesn't say you did anything, you planned evil against me. Now, the question is, were the brothers ultimately guilty of Joseph being sold into Egypt? Now, Joseph himself said it was ordained by God that he should be in Egypt. But the brothers created the situation to where the Midianites could have come along, pulled him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites. What was their real big sin in this? Their big sin in this was that their brother was crying to them from the pit for help, and they ignored him. That created a condition by which he could then be sold into Egypt. Yes, it was God's plan that he would be in Egypt. But as far as the details of how it was going to happen, I don't think the brothers had to participate in doing such an evil thing against their brother. Well, that brings up the question then, what about our intent and our actions toward our brothers and sisters? When the Pharisees asked Yeshua, Jesus, what the greatest of the commandments was, he said, it's this, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and all your strength. Now, the other one, he said, is like it. You must love your neighbor as yourself. So just a little quick commercial here. Not a commercial. If you claim to love Jesus and you don't love Israel, you need to reevaluate your faith, because you are grafted in to the nation of Israel. You're grafted into the people of Israel. And what love is it that you're showing to them? Are you praying for Israel? Are you supporting for Israel? So let's go back for just a second. Love each other. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love each other as yourselves. If you look at the book of John, chapter 13, verses 33 through 35, Yeshua takes this and he wrenches it up just a little bit. And this is what it says, little children, I'm with you only a little longer. You will search for me, and just as I told the Judean leaders, so I say to you, where I'm going you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. So you must also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Now what does he mean when he says, love each other as I have loved you? It was far greater than love each other as you love yourselves. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. He went far beyond that. So if we hear people who are crying out for help, do we turn a deaf ear to them? Or do we help them? If we know that there are people who are suffering, do we just kind of pass on by and not do anything for them? Or do we show them the love that Messiah showed, to where he went beyond loving others as he loved himself? He loved others greater because he said he laid his life down. So it's something to think about, something I want to encourage us, all of us, to be encouraged in, because these are very dark days that we live in, and we need to make sure that we are loving each other with a selfless love, because the truth is, if we're waiting on God to do something, we're in the wrong. God is waiting on us. As a matter of fact, in 2 Peter, I believe it's chapter 3, I haven't looked it up today, it actually says that we can hasten the return of Messiah. by doing the works that He's called us to do. No greater work than to love God with all our hearts and to love each other as the Messiah has loved us. Well, that's all for today. May you be blessed and filled with peace.